What if every time Tom Brady threw a touchdown in his career, you had invested $100? From his first touchdown pass in 2001 all the way to his final game more than 2 decades later, this video we're going to be tracking what that would look like if you had invested that money into 3 different options and never sold a single share. 3 options we're going to be looking at are the S&P 500, which we're going to represent by the SPY ETF, Apple stock, and Bitcoin once it becomes available. Let's start with his first season to show you how this is going to work. In 2001, Brady took over for an injured Drew Bledsoe in week 2 and ended up actually leading New England to their first ever Super Bowl win that year. He threw 19 touchdown passes, including the playoffs. If you had just saved $100 for each of those touchdowns, you'd have $1,900 to invest by the end of the season. We're going to be using Super Bowl Monday prices as our entry points following each season. So in the case of this 2002 Super Bowl, SPY was around $112 per share, and after accounting for all splits, Apple shares were actually trading under $1 per share at the time. Keep in mind that all of those prices we're going to be using for Apple in the video will account for all of its splits and normalize the price to today's price point. Fast forward a few years to the 2004 season that came to a conclusion in February of 2005. Brady had captured his 3rd Super Bowl in 4 seasons. Your total contributions would be $10,800 for those 108 touchdowns he had thrown. It may sound like a lot of money, but it would certainly be manageable over the course of 4 years with any sort of decent budgeting. At this point, the power of compounding was already starting to take hold, especially with those early Apple shares. In 2007, Brady and the Patriots were unstoppable. 50 touchdowns in a single season and a perfect 16-0 regular season. That meant $5,600 invested in February of 2008, the largest single year contribution in his career, despite them coming up short in the Super Bowl to Eli Manning and the Giants. To put that amount in perspective, the average US salary in 2008 was just over $42,000, so this would require about 13% of your annual salary if you didn't have any leftover savings from previous years, which would be very possible with good budgeting once again. At the time, SPY was hovering around $139, and Apple had actually just launched the iPhone leading up to that season, so this stock was climbing past $4 per share. The Patriots dynasty or your investment with either of these options would be looking invincible. But then came the 2008 financial crisis. The market dropped nearly 40%, and on top of that, Brady actually tore his ACL this year, meaning no new investment in the 2008 season. Your portfolio would have taken a hit, but like Brady, you held on through the turmoil. Brady returned in the 2009 season with 30 total passing touchdowns. Each season, you'd keep stacking a few thousand here, a few thousand there, buying more shares of either SPY or Apple every February after the Super Bowl. Fast forward a couple years though, and Bitcoin had finally entered the scene and became publicly available in that sort of 2011-2012 range, giving us a 3rd investment scenario to track. That $4,700 from Brady's 47 total touchdowns that 2011-2012 season could have been invested at roughly $6 per coin. And if you know anything about the current price of Bitcoin, this should give you a glimpse at just how explosive these numbers are about to get, despite missing out on the opportunity to invest in it for the first 10 years or so of Brady's career. By 2013, you would have invested around $37,600 in total into SPY and Apple. SPY was above $150 per share, and Apple shares were surging past $16. That $37,600 in Apple investments already would have been worth nearly $500,000. That $6 price point for Bitcoin had already multiplied to $22 in a matter of a year. Brady continued to dominate the 2010s, winning Super Bowls in 2015 and 2017, and Bitcoin actually exploded to over $1,000 per coin following that Super Bowl in 2017. By February of 2017, your total investments would have looked like this. If you had invested into SPY, it would have been worth nearly $100,000, Apple just shy of $1 million, and with Bitcoin having that surge past 1,000, your $22,800 invested over 6 seasons would now be worth over $1 million. Now, even in his 40s, Brady wasn't slowing down, adding his 6th Super Bowl in 2019 before making his move to Tampa Bay, where in his first season he threw 50 touchdowns and went on to win his 7th and final Super Bowl. By 2021, these are what your potential portfolios would look like. SPY would be worth about $164,000, Apple over $4 million, and Bitcoin with only $37,300 invested. That portfolio would now be worth roughly $40 million. After 23 seasons, Tom Brady finally decided to retire, which would shut down your new investments for good. By 2025, your total contributions would have been $73,700 for SPY and Apple for each of his 737 passing touchdowns in his career, and $44,600 in Bitcoin for the 446 passing touchdowns he had since that 2011 season. And if you were to have held all of these investments through his retirement to today's terms without selling a single dime, this is how it would look. Your SPY shares would be worth roughly $297,000 with a closing price this Friday, October 24th of $677.25. If you would have invested all of that money into Apple stock and not sold any of it throughout his career, be worth about $7.98 million with a closing price of $262.82 per share as of Friday. And last but certainly not least, we would have Bitcoin. Despite it getting about a 10-year disadvantage, would come in at a staggering $111 million, that price being above $110,000 as of 4 p.m. on Friday, all from setting aside just $100 per touchdown. Brady's career was a masterclass in longevity, consistency, and discipline. If there's anything this experiment shows you, it's that the same is true in investing. Let's be frank, would the normal person be investing in Apple in 2001 and Bitcoin in 2012 and then not selling any of it? Absolutely not, but it's certainly fun to track it hypothetically. Steady contributions to the S&P 500, however, would have been entirely possible. Small, steady investments over decades can easily turn into thousands, if not millions of dollars, because sometimes the real GOAT is compound interest.